everyone. This is Nithin Ramachandra from the NR Hour Sports Show. This is episode 767. I'm joined by a special guest, Jay Foreman. He's a former NFL linebacker, and he's a son of legendary running back Chuck Foreman. So we're really looking forward to this interview. And Jay, I just want to say thank you for joining this show. It's truly an honor. How are you and your family doing so far during this tough situation?
Oh, we're doing good. Every day's a blessing. I think in years past, I think people would always say it, and I wouldn't say they felt like they were obligated to say it, but I think that you just said it out of just out of just habit. I think now, obviously, you appreciate things a lot more, but I'm knock on wood. I think everybody's doing pretty well.
Yeah, so let's get right into this. So obviously, your father is a former NFL player, so how was it for you looking at your father playing in the league also? Did that make you decide to play football too when you saw your father?
You know what? The funny story is that, I always knew him as dad growing up. And obviously, I think it might have been around like sixth grade. He came to school and it was like the parting of the Red Sea. And he came in and everybody was oohing and on. And now I do remember this. I remember it like, as clear as, I can at 45 years old, but a kid that I was in school with, he's like, man, do you know who your dad is? And I was like, that's my dad. And I really didn't realize who he was or the magnitude of his playing career in Minnesota at that time. I grew up in DC until around sixth grade, moved to Minnesota with him. So he kind of always tried to shelter me from the pressure of following in his footsteps. He was a world-class athlete, tremendous basketball player, even, just as good in track. I think he was in, that maybe the Olympic trials and the 300, IM hurdle. So, I always tell people he was obviously a way better athlete than I think I was. And so, to be honest with you, I grew up and loved basketball. It's the easiest thing to do. Growing up in Minnesota, a lot of kids played hockey. We couldn't afford to play hockey. My dad told me that, and I understood it just because, it's a very expensive sport. Played basketball, and all you need is sneakers and a hoop. And so, I didn't ever play football because he did or try to go pro because he did. I played football just because I actually ended up liking it. And I grew up watching a lot of football games. This is a funny story with my grandparents, with my grandfather and my grandma. And I would tell you this. My grandma's passed away now, but she was sharp as a tack when it came to football. We used to sit up and growing up in DC, watch the Redskins all the time. Grew up as a Redskins fan, obviously Vikings fan. But one of my fondest memories always is during training camp time. The Redskins used to scrimmage the Pittsburgh Steelers back then, and it would be on the local channels. So we would watch their practices and the scrimmages, and so we would talk about football, and then obviously I'd play like Pee Wee leagues or whatever you want to call it. And, one thing led to another. My dad always told me, look, he has one rule, just play as hard as you can and be a good teammate. So it's actually two rules. And he probably knew everything else would take care of itself. By no means was I a finished product coming out of high school. Right. So it kind of, one of the things I always tried to do is keep it real simple. He did the same thing, and, it kind of worked out, and the rest is history.
I mean, the numbers he put up in the NFL is crazy. I saw all the numbers and the accolades. Your father had an amazing career. What a great career he had. And for you, I'm just curious. Before you chose the linebacker position, did he ever teach you the running back position while you were working on your craft?
I would say the running back position, I think, was in our blood or in my blood. Just like I said, I watched football all the time. So I think the kids that play football now or any sport, they don't really watch like on the weekends, So I kind of learned from watching and seeing him. He really never, I'm gonna tell you what, man, to be honest with you, my dad never, we'd be in the back playing catch and stuff like that. We'd just be talking, but he never like got me out there and like most people think, put me through drills and, like you're going to be a running back. Now he'd teach me some things like, hey, look at, how the defense is run, but he just really just let me go off of natural ability and just run as hard as you can and always learn every position. One of the things he did tell me this, and it helped me on defense as well. He said you need to learn what the offensive line is doing, what the tight ends are doing, and what the receivers are doing on every single play. And so what he was doing is getting me to learn the game. And he knew that I loved football and I loved competing enough that once I knew what everybody else was doing, that I would kind of be able to find out, the angles, the run, and all the other stuff. So, I think my dad was kind of, ahead of the curve and teaching me stuff like that. But he never, like I said, he never put any pressure on me to play football. He just was very frank with me about where we were at, like financially, as far as getting to school and go to college. And I kind of just added it up. Like, I had some few offers to play basketball, but then football, I think it was 25 scholarships. So I was like, well, even if I don't make it, they're not going to,
right.
It's not going to cost them that much, when you got 25 a year, as long as I just stayed out of trouble and worked hard. I felt like, I would get a good education. And so the biggest thing that we always, or the thing that was always preached in my house is education. And they can never take that away from you. And then, so that was that was it, man. That was first and foremost. And then football and in sports were the payoff from good grades. And if I didn't meet those expectations, the things that I liked and loved were, put on the back burner.
Yeah. So speaking of scholarships, obviously you said that you weren't the finished product in high school, but what made you choose Nebraska? What led you to that school? What was their recruiting process for you?
Well, I grew up in a Miami household, Miami Hurricanes. All my dad went there, and uncles, and I call them my play uncles. They all of them went to Miami. So I grew up in a Miami household, and that's where I wanted to go, where I thought I wanted to go. They offered early, but I never heard from them after that. I think it was kind of, they threw out the offer and then kind of thought I was going to go, and maybe, I kind of felt like they might have pulled it at the end because I didn't hear from them much during my senior year. And, leading up to my senior year, I was getting some feelers, but nothing much. It's a lot different now than it was then. They didn't have, Huddle or any of these other things. They didn't even have Instagram where I could post my highlights or, what I did at a 7-on-7 camp. And so, my dad was big, like, the big thing was, you got to put good tape out there. And did my junior year, but being from Minnesota, which was never a hotbed of athletes then, it was slow churning. But then we played a team that had actually Lane Kiffin on the team, who's the head coach at University of Mississippi now, and two other Division I guys.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of coaches there to see them. Nick Saban, Tom Osborne, who obviously eventually ended up being my coach.
Oh, wow.
The Iowa coach was there, Hayden Fry and some other ones. And we were playing them in a homecoming game, and, the stars aligned, and, I was playing offense and defense that game. It was my first time in my senior year, and, had 200 yards rushing and a couple touchdowns and, just big plays on defense. And the next thing you know, my phone was ringing. And Nebraska was at that time starting to kind of get on the national scene and being a legitimate contender versus just a layup for the Hurricanes to beat up on a New Year's Eve or a New Year's Day. And, kind of fell into it. I thought I was going to go to Iowa. It was the closest one to home. Came down here in Nebraska and instantly fell in love with it. Coach Osborne came to my house the day before they went down on their bowl trip. So that was a big deal to me. My dad trusted and obviously respected him. And I felt very comfortable there. And that's how I got to Nebraska. And so it wasn't, like I said, I didn't have this recruiting, story where there was, people knocking at my door since ninth grade. I had to work for it and use it as fuel. And I, at the time I didn't like it because I felt like I was the best player in the state, of Minnesota, and the University of Minnesota wasn't even recruiting me then, and they were horrible, so, I think that didn't help me. But then once I kind of started to get some tread, then, things started to open up for me. But, I didn't have a made for TV recruitment where I had such a big decision for 2 or 3 years. It kind of heated up good. It heated up towards the, middle of my senior year and really took off after that.
Yeah. For me, when it comes to talking to these athletes like you, I just like to learn about how they work hard and where they got and how they got there. And that's the main thing when I learn about these interviews. And so I got to ask you about your draft experience. Obviously, you got drafted in 1999. Round 5, pick 156 with the Buffalo Bills. What was that like when you got the call from the Bills?
Man, it was great. I mean, it was a relief, I mean, again, no different than high school going to college. And then when you're going to get drafted, and you always wish you got drafted higher and all this other stuff. So you're kind of, I was angry up until that 716 came on my 71 or on my cell phone, and that's the Buffalo area code. And here's a funny story, or a kind of cool story, is the hard-headed and ignorant self of Jay Foreman college. I was like, the two places that I don't want to play is Green Bay and Buffalo, because I played in cold weather in high school and in college, thinking I want to, get to pick to go play in great weather, knowing in December everywhere is generally kind of cooler. But at the combine, I interviewed with every team except for Green Bay and Buffalo. And so I was like, okay, cool. Well, these are the, okay, I got lucky. These are the, I'm going to get drafted hopefully by, the other teams. And, one thing led to another, and kind of whether I slipped or kind of get, fell into Buffalo's lap. And Buffalo had already had a pretty good backstory on me, because a couple of our coaches went there during training camp and picked up on, NFL defenses. So they knew about me and they trusted our coaches, and they picked me, man. And it was the greatest thing, or greatest, day, in my sporting life that I, ever had. And there was a lot of relief. There was a lot of joy. You start to think back all the sacrifices that not only I made, but family made, and everybody who really supported you and was there for you. And it was as excited as I was to get drafted. They were excited, but I was excited for them because I knew we were going to go and experience some great times and memories. So it was great, man. It was stressful. The draft's coming up Thursday.
Yeah.
the guys that are going to get picked on Thursday, or potentially get picked on Thursday. I'm assuming the guys after the top 15 kind of know where they're going to go, or know that they're going to get drafted in top 15. After that, there's about 30 or 40 guys that are, on pins and needles, because, you're going to get drafted. And I wasn't in that position. I kind of felt like I could get drafted in the second or third round, or I could be a free agent. These guys know they're going to get drafted, in the first 3 rounds. They're just wondering where they're going to go, how much, their contract's going to be, et cetera. So they got big problems, right? They got, I call those first world problems.
Yeah.
They got, they got problems that not a lot of people have to worry about. But there's still a lot of anxiety with it, a lot of pressure, and so it's a game that you love, and this is the ultimate be all. To play at the professional level against the best of the best, and see where you stack up, and see what type of player you are is it's a big deal. And so I know what it felt like. Not only that, but then to wait until the 5th round, I definitely know what they felt like, and it definitely sat into I wouldn't say panic mode, but it definitely was a stressful time. But it all worked out for the right reasons, and I love playing in Buffalo. I love my time up there, and if I had to look back on it, I wouldn't change too much about it either.
Yeah, so speaking of moving from team to team, not only you play for Buffalo, but you play for the Texans, Giants, and 49ers. Actually, Brandon Schwartz, he was on the show today. He also played for the Giants at one point.
Right.
Yeah. So for you, how tough is it for you and your family when you had to move from team to team, and what did you learn from each team throughout your career?
That's a great question. It wasn't very tough, because that's just part of the NFL life, man. That's what you sign up for, right? It's a short time. It stands for not for long. I mean, there's guys that look. Tom Brady is not more than an outlier. It's never going to happen again. I mean, there's guys that'll play 20, but it's just a linebacker doesn't usually happen. I mean, of course, there was a Junior Seau and Ray Lewis and those guys that played 14, 15, 16 years, but you're going to possibility that you're going to be bounced around the league, and you're going to have to play for more than one franchise. So that wasn't a big deal. It was just kind of part of the life. It sucked. I didn't start having kids or a family towards the end of my career, so that didn't affect us. Now it just affected of when your contract was up, what's going to happen. Are you going to get your just due again? Your weight is always back to high school. That's probably more of a issue, just of where you're going to go, right? Because you're not in control. You're a good, you're a good player. Here's the funny thing about the NFL: you can go and have a career year, but if it's, if they don't need a lot of linebackers, or if there's a big if there's a big group of good linebackers coming in the draft, then that affects how your free agency market is as well, because, they can get those guys for cheap at that time. So that didn't really affect us or affect the family. Now, how I adjusted, from team to team is same thing. It's like you're a hired gun. You go there and, you're there to handle your business. Now, what I did take as I got older in the league is started to appreciate being at Buffalo, right? Because it was a first-class organization when I got there. They had a GM by the name of John Butler who was as honest as he could be as a GM, treated you fairly, treated you as a human and as a person, cared about you, believed in building their team through the draft versus going on, kind of playing taxi, cabs to, every Monday you got new guys coming in and out. So you take that, right? And then you go to Houston where they're just getting started and they don't really know what they're doing. And I would say, like, we had everything figured out except for what to actually put out there on the field, right? And sometimes you get people in power positions down there that are just down there, throwing stuff against the wall and see what sticks. And then they tried to keep their job a little bit longer. And we had a top 10 defense for the 3 years I was there. And then, in order to save their job, they blew up the defense. And then that gives them a year or two and it still didn't work out. So then I went to the Giants, and that's a first-class organization. That's a breath of fresh air. So you learn different things, how they do things, how they travel, how they treat their players. And then San Francisco was the same. So I always say, like, man, I wish I could have had my last 2 stops in the middle of my career versus the place in Houston in the middle of my career. And I say that with saying that Houston is where I took off individually, right? But I love winning so much, I would have sacrificed some individual stats and stuff like that to win more games. Ultimately, the more you win, the longer you stay in the league. So it's kind of a catch-22. You see guys that are in a winning program or a winning situation, organization, they end up playing maybe 5 to 10 more years than actually what they look like on film, because everybody wants to be associated with quote-unquote winners, right? So, but, look, I'm pulling hair here, pulling small hairs here. But, I did learn a lot. I learned a lot about corporate business, and just how to deal with things. I think that one of the best things my agent ever told me is, like, I was like, why are they, wanting to get rid of me when I'm the leader of the team and productive? And he's like, you know what, Jay, to be honest with you, they don't know. And there's actually a reason why you'll never know. So don't even worry about it. So that I took that on, and I never forgot that, because there's situations in life where things happen, and whether it's personal relationships, business relationships, that it just doesn't work out, or, it doesn't work out in your favor, and you're trying to, you're putting in the honest effort, it doesn't work out, and you just kind of move along, and it's, some things are just not meant for you to know. And so I took a lot from my NFL experience. Obviously it wasn't all peaches and cream, because you got to deal with injuries and stuff like that. But ultimately, it's probably more positive than negative.
Yeah. So this is a 2-part question here. So looking back at your career, how grateful are you that you got to play the game that you loved? Over 500 tackles, over 4 sacks, and playing in the NFL like what your father did also. So how grateful are you to be in this position right now?
Oh yeah, I mean, I appreciate it. I mean, I look at it like, I don't, what they say, 3% of high school athletes make it to college, 1% get drafted, and probably 1% of that 1% lasts long enough to be vested. So I did everything and then some. Like I said, I think my sports career is complete. I'm, obviously, of course, I would have liked to be a Hall of Fame player, but I had a realistic view going in that might not have been in the cards. So I'm very appreciative, and I'm very fortunate to make it there. I've earned it, and so that makes it even better. And, I feel blessed to be able to do something that 99 point whatever percent of the people or athletes that weren't able to do. So, but with that also, I, try to do, it's just a small part of my life and a small part of who I am. And then just, I try to use everything that I either learned or how I can use it for the, better good in a positive thing. I know I can't play football anymore, so it's not like something that I won't get over or haven't gotten over. my playing days are way gone.
Yeah. So also now, obviously transitioning from your career, you guys have a foundation, and can you speak on more about your foundation and what it entails?
Yeah, what we do in short, we raise money and awareness for diabetes, and particularly like low income diabetics. And the way I did that or came about that is my grandfather passed away of complications from diabetes when I was in college, and it kind of really had a big effect on me. We were close, and he never really got to see me at the professional level. So I always wanted to honor him and see if there's a way that I can help people. And then obviously my dad's type 2 diabetic, and I remember taking him to, I think it was Walgreens, and helping him fill his prescriptions. And I was like, whoa, this is expensive. So, I just try to, do my part. I think diabetes is the, I think it's the underlying disease that leads to bigger, I call them the more sexy things like, heart disease and stuff like that, where people, are more readily on the commercials and stuff like that. So I think diabetes is something that has grown in Americans or throughout the world. And I think if you can bring awareness to it, I think people hopefully will, take note of it and try to live a more healthier life. So that's what we do. We hold different events throughout the year, and then it goes to a place called the Clinic with the Heart here in Lincoln, which is a grassroots organization started by Dr. Rhodes here in Lincoln, and it's a free clinic, so we were able to provide grants and stuff like that. So it's fulfilling. It's a lot of work, but it's goes to a good cause.
Yeah. So before we get to the last two things here, I have another two-part question. I'm a big Dallas Cowboy fan, and Sean Lee retired today. And what are your thoughts on him as a player and in his career? And who do you like in this year's draft as linebacker?
Oh man. Well, first and foremost, I won't hold it against you that you're a Dallas Cowboys fan. Because being a Houston Texans, we do not like the Cowboys. So I won't hold that against you. But Sean Lee is somebody that I loved watching because he plays it the right way. He didn't cheat the game, and he was a playmaker. Yeah, obviously he's been injured a lot in his career, but when he was a leader, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for him. I saw that he retired, but you know what? He had a phenomenal career, all with one team, which is a great accomplishment in itself. One of the best linebackers probably to play for the Cowboys, and I'm gonna say the last 20 years. No disrespect to anybody else. I think he's obviously a really good player. So as sad as it is for him to probably hang it up, and he probably a year or two before he'd like, it's a time to rejoice and really appreciate what he did on the field. So I think he's was a great player, and probably be in the Cowboys Ring of Honor here pretty soon. So as far as the best college linebackers, I'm gonna just give you two. Number one is Micah Parsons. I think he's a guy that he can play in any defense, and he can play inside and out. So that's why I like to look at guys that are versatile. Obviously you saw his, being 250 pounds, running the 4.3 40. He's a phenomenal athlete, but then it matches up with what he does on the field. And in Penn State, obviously Sean Lee's from there. They put out a ton of great linebackers, and he's the next in line, and he wore number 11. LeVar Arrington made that, and other guys that have wore 11 have been pretty special, and I expect him to do the same. So he's the easy one to kind of pick. But the guy that I really, really like is a guy by the name of Jamin Davis. He's from Kentucky. He has the size at 6'3", 234, 240, so he can play inside and outside. He can play on the line. He can rush the passer. He makes big plays. He played in the SEC, and he's been very, very productive the last 2 years. So I like him as an overall linebacker, behind Micah Parsons. I think if I had to bet in a year or two, if we're talking about this draft class, I think Micah Parsons obviously is going to be special. But I think he's going to be the guy that's going to be the next, where he's starting to kind of, I call it, ascend into being a pretty well-known linebacker at the NFL level.
Wow. And the last two things here, our team is part of this foundation called the Hugh Jackson Foundation. Obviously a former NFL coach. He just got the coaching job at Tennessee State as an offensive coordinator with Eddie George on his staff. And we're really inspired helping him out with the foundation, and we're trying to help prevent human trafficking and making sure the community is safe and the children make the right choices. So I'll send you that foundation so you can check it. And the last thing here, would you like to say anything to all the nurses, doctors, and essential workers right
Uh,
now?
oh, I mean, it's first and foremost, thank you and continue thanks, right? Because it's not over. But you talk about football and being tough and being on the front lines and dealing with physicality. I mean, they have taken it to another level. And to answer the bell without any knowledge or any kind of playbook of the outcome takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of strength. It takes a lot of internal drive. And it's also they're doing it for people that they have no connection to, whether it's family or just emotional connection to it. So when you talk about uh, you know, being, first round draft choices, that's it. That's it. And they are dealing with stuff that's way bigger than, stuff I talked about, worried about where I'm gonna get drafted. They're worried about if they're gonna be healthy enough or, make it out of work. And they have to deal with and see some things necessarily that they didn't sign up for to see at that type of rate. And I always had tremendous amount of respect for the nurses and the doctors and the frontline workers. But now it's just gone up a notch if it could. And, I'm appreciative to everything that they do. Continue to be thankful of what they do. And never, ever will I forget what, the way that they went to battle for the betterment of the whole, not only the nation, but, the world to try to figure out how to, stop the spread. So, and I think some of the work they've done is, maybe allowed us to have some sort of normalcy right now, where you can kind of, you see people at games and stuff like that, where there was no sight or no thought that we'd be maybe a year from now or a year, to which is to right now to be able to talk about it. So big thanks. And I definitely appreciate it, as many people do. And, obviously big ups to the Hugh Jackson Foundation as well, just because that's a big problem. I think it's been rampant over the last few years, obviously you guys know. So anything I can do to help market that as well. So I appreciate, you guys having me on.
Yeah, thank you. Well said. And there it is. That wraps up episode 757 with former NFL Nebraska linebacker Jay Foreman. Obviously, he's the son of legendary running back Foreman. Oh man! But thank you for joining the show today. I truly appreciate it. And first of all, thank you again, and you know, family, stay safe.
All right, man. You too. Thanks.